This is Judge Mindy Glazer. She's sitting in Miami-Dade Bond Court on what seems like just another regular morning. She's about to see dozens of defendants. Routine bond hearings, in and out, fast proceedings, nothing special. But in about an hour, something's going to happen that will change everything. A moment that will shock her. A moment that will go viral around the world. A moment that shows how one person's life can go so terribly wrong. It's 9 a.m. in Miami-Dade County. The courtroom is filling up with defendants in orange jumpsuits. Some look nervous, some look angry, some look like they've been through this 100 times before. One guy in the back row is literally sleeping. The corrections officer has to wake him up. Judge Glazer starts her morning announcements. Standard procedure. She tells everyone she's appointing the public defender unless they can afford a private lawyer. She asks if anyone has served in the military. She's done this same speech thousands of times. The defendants start coming up one by one. A woman charged with shoplifting, a man arrested for domestic violence, another guy caught with drugs. Each case takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Question, answer, set bond, next person. Then Arthur Booth walks in. He's 49 years old, wearing an orange jumpsuit. His hair is messy. He looks tired, defeated. This is not his first time in court, not even close. Arthur Booth is what the system calls a career criminal. His rap sheet is long, very long: burglary, grand theft, fleeing from police, resisting arrest. He's been in and out of prison for years. Judge Glazer looks at his file. She starts reading the charges. You're arrested for burglary, grand theft, fleeing police, resisting arrest. She goes through the list. There are actually 3 separate arrest affidavits: reckless driving, property damage, leaving the scene of a crash. Arthur stands there quietly. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's polite at least. He knows the drill. He's been through this before, many times before. The judge starts explaining his bond amounts. $7,500 on count 1. She's going through the numbers, standard procedure, but then something happens. She pauses. She looks up from the paperwork. She stares at Arthur's face. Something about him seems familiar, very familiar. Judge Glazer asks, "Did you go to Nautilus Middle School?" Arthur looks confused for a second, then his eyes go wide. He stares at the judge. "Oh my goodness," he says, "oh my goodness." The judge's face changes completely. She recognizes him now. This isn't just another defendant. This is someone from her past, someone she knew, someone she grew up with. Arthur starts crying, not just tears, he's sobbing. His whole body is shaking. He covers his face with his hands. Judge Glazer is emotional too. Her voice cracks. She says, "I'm sorry to see you here. I always wondered what happened to you." Arthur can't speak. He's crying too hard. He just keeps saying, "Oh my goodness," over and over. The judge continues. She says, "This was the nicest kid in middle school. He was the best kid. I used to play football with him. We all played together, and look what happened." The entire courtroom is silent. The other defendants are watching. The lawyers are watching. The corrections officers are watching. Nobody moves. This is not a normal bond hearing anymore. Arthur is still crying. He can't control it. All those years, all those bad choices, all that time in prison, and now he's standing in front of someone who knew him when he was a kid, when he had potential, when he had a future. Judge Glazer knew Arthur when he was 12 years old. They went to Nautilus Middle School together in Miami. Back then, Arthur was popular, smart, athletic. Everyone liked him. He played football. He got good grades. Teachers loved him. He was one of those kids everyone said would do something great. But something went wrong, very wrong. After middle school, Arthur started making bad choices. He got into drugs, started with marijuana, then moved to harder stuff. Cocaine, then crack. The addiction took over his life. He dropped out of high school at 16, started stealing to feed his habit. Small stuff at first, shoplifting, then car break-ins, then burglaries. By the time he was 20, he had his first felony conviction. Prison, release, that became his pattern. He'd get out, promise to stay clean, relapse within weeks, commit more crimes to get drug money, get arrested again. His family tried everything. His mother never gave up on him. She bailated him out, got him into rehab programs, begged him to get help. But addiction is powerful, more powerful than love, more powerful than family, more powerful than promises. Arthur also developed a gambling problem. When he wasn't using drugs, he was at the casino or betting on sports. He'd steal money, gamble it away, need more money, steal again, a vicious cycle. Over the years, he racked up dozens of arrests: burglary, theft, drug possession, driving with a suspended license, probation violations. Each time he'd tell the judge he was going to change. Each time he meant it, but each time he failed. Now here he is at 49 years old, almost 50, half his life gone, most of it spent in prison or committing crimes, and standing in front of someone who knew him when he was innocent, when he had dreams, when the world was full of possibilities. Judge Glazer looks at Arthur with genuine sadness. You can see it in her face. This isn't just another criminal to her. This is someone she played with as a child, someone who had the same opportunities she had, someone who could have been anything. She tells him, "I hope you're able to come out of this okay and lead a lawful life." Her voice is full of emotion. She's not just a judge anymore. She's a former classmate watching someone she once knew completely destroyed by addiction and bad choices. Arthur tries to compose himself. He wipes his face. He's still crying but trying to stop. He says, "Thank you, Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." The judge sets his bond, $43,000 total for all the charges. Arthur nods. He knows he can't afford that. He's going to stay in jail until his trial. He's done this before. He knows how it works. As the corrections officer leads him away, Arthur looks back at Judge Glazer one more time. Their eyes meet. So much history in that look, so much regret, so much loss. The bailiff calls the next case. Court continues, but everyone in that room felt something. That moment was different. That moment was real. That moment showed that behind every criminal there's a person, a story, a life that went wrong somewhere. After the hearing, the video goes viral. Millions of people watch it online. It becomes a national story. News outlets everywhere cover it. The reunion between the judge and the defendant, the emotional moment that touched everyone. People have different reactions. Some feel sympathy for Arthur. They say addiction is a disease. He needs help, not prison. Others say he's had plenty of chances. He made his choices. He needs to face the consequences. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. It's heartbreaking. Watching someone's potential get completely wasted. Watching someone who could have been anything end up as a career criminal. Reporters dig into Arthur's history. They find out more details. After middle school, his parents divorced. That affected him deeply. He started hanging out with the wrong crowd, got into trouble. His grades dropped. He started using drugs at 14. By 16, he was arrested for the first time, shoplifting. His mother cried in court. The judge gave him a warning, sealed his juvenile record, gave him a second chance, but Arthur didn't take it. His mother, Margaret Booth, gave an interview after the viral video. She said Arthur was such a good boy, so sweet, so smart. She didn't know when things changed. One day he was her little boy. The next day he was a stranger. She talked about the drugs, how they took over his personality, how he'd steal from her to get drug money, how he'd disappear for days, how many times she'd get that phone call from the police. "Ma'am, your son has been arrested again." Margaret said she'd lost count of how many times Arthur had been to prison. Maybe 8 times, maybe 10. She wasn't sure anymore. Every time he got out, she'd hope this was it. This time he'd stay clean. This time would be different, but it never was. She talked about the moment she saw the video of Arthur crying in front of Judge Glazer. She said it broke her heart all over again, seeing her son like that, seeing him realize what his life had become. Seeing him face someone from his past who remembered when he was good. Margaret said Arthur called her from jail after the hearing. He was still crying. He kept saying, "Mom, I'm so sorry for everything." She told him it wasn't too late, he could still change, but deep down she wasn't sure she believed it anymore. The charges Arthur faced this time were serious. He'd broken into a house in broad daylight. Stole jewelry, electronics, cash. The homeowners were at work. When they came home and found their house ransacked, they called police. Arthur was spotted a few hours later driving recklessly. Police tried to pull him over. He fled. High-speed chase through Miami streets. He crashed into 2 parked cars, then tried to run on foot. Police tackled him. He resisted. They had to tase him. When they searched his car, they found all the stolen items from the burglary. plus drug paraphernalia, plus a small amount of cocaine. He was high during the chase. This wasn't going to be a slap on the wrist. This was serious felony charges. With his record, he was looking at significant prison time, years, maybe even a decade or more. Arthur's public defender, Maria Santos, knew it was a tough case. Her client was caught red-handed. Video evidence, physical evidence, witness statements, multiple charges, long criminal history, not much room to negotiate. But then something unexpected happened. After the viral video, people started reaching out. Drug rehabilitation centers offered to help. Addiction counselors volunteered their services. Even Judge Glazer, though she couldn't get directly involved in his case, made some calls behind the scenes. A treatment center in South Florida called Hope Recovery offered Arthur a spot in their long-term program. 1-year minimum, intensive therapy, medical supervision, job training, housing assistance after completion. But there was a condition: he had to want it, he had to commit, no more excuses. The prosecutor, David Chen, saw an opportunity. Arthur Booth had been through the system so many times. Prison clearly wasn't working. Maybe treatment would. Maybe this viral moment, this emotional reunion, maybe that was the wake-up call Arthur needed. Chen approached Maria Santos with a deal. Arthur would plead guilty to the charges, but instead of prison, he'd get 10 months in county jail, followed by immediate transfer to the treatment program. If he completed the full year of treatment successfully, his sentence would be reduced. If he failed or left early, he'd go straight to state prison for 15 years. It was a huge gamble for everyone, for Arthur, for the treatment center, for the prosecutor's office, for the criminal justice system. Arthur had to make a choice. Prison was familiar, he'd been there before, he knew how to survive there. Treatment was scary. It meant facing his demons, facing his addiction, facing all the pain and trauma he'd been running from his whole life. His mother visited him in jail. She begged him to take the deal. "This is your last chance," she said, "the last one. If you don't do this, you're going to die in prison. Please, baby, please try one more time." Arthur thought about Judge Glazer, about that moment in court, about seeing the disappointment in her eyes, about remembering who he used to be, about all the wasted years, all the wasted potential. He thought about his own kids. He had 3 children from 2 different relationships. He barely knew them. He'd been absent their whole lives, in and out of prison. They were ashamed of him. One of his daughters had told him she never wanted to see him again. Arthur was tired of the drugs, tired of the stealing, tired of the running, tired of disappointing everyone, tired of disappointing himself. At 49 years old, he was exhausted from living the way he'd been living. He took the deal, pleaded guilty, accepted the 10 months in county jail plus the treatment program. The judge in his case, not Judge Glazer but another judge handling the criminal trial, warned him, "This is your last chance, Mr. Booth. If you mess this up, you'll spend the next 15 years in state prison. Do you understand?" Arthur said, "Yes, Your Honor, I understand. I'm ready. I want to change." People were skeptical. Reporters who covered the story doubted he'd make it. His criminal history suggested he'd fail. Addiction is relentless. Most addicts relapse multiple times before getting clean, if they ever get clean at all. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the viral video, maybe it was seeing Judge Glazer, maybe it was hitting rock bottom so publicly, maybe it was just timing. Sometimes people aren't ready to change until they're ready, and maybe, finally, Arthur was ready. He spent his 10 months in county jail, used that time to start preparing, attended every drug counseling session available, read books about addiction and recovery, wrote letters to his family apologizing for everything, wrote a letter to Judge Glazer thanking her. Judge Glazer received Arthur's letter. She was touched. She wrote back, told him she believed in him, told him she remembered the good kid from middle school and that kid was still in there somewhere, told him it wasn't too late. When Arthur's 10 months were up, he was transferred directly to Hope Recovery Center. It's a facility in Fort Lauderdale. Strict rules: no phone calls for the first month, no visitors for 2 months, mandatory attendance at all therapy sessions, daily drug testing. Any violation means immediate dismissal and straight to prison. The first few weeks were hell. Detox, withdrawal. Arthur's body was screaming for drugs. He couldn't sleep. He was shaking. sweating, vomiting. The medical staff monitored him 24/7. Several times he almost quit, almost walked out, but something kept him there. Group therapy was hard, sitting in a circle with other addicts, talking about feelings, talking about trauma. Arthur had spent his whole life running from feelings. Now he had to face them, had to talk about his childhood. His parents' divorce, the violence he saw growing up, the abuse he suffered, all the pain he'd buried under drugs and crime. One of his counselors, Dr. Patricia Williams, said Arthur resisted at first. Most addicts do. They've built walls around themselves. Breaking through those walls takes time, takes trust, takes courage. Slowly, Arthur started to open up, started to talk about things he'd never told anyone, about the shame he felt, about the guilt, about hating himself, about wanting to die sometimes, about feeling like he'd wasted his entire life. Dr. Williams helped him understand that addiction is a disease. It's not a moral failing. It's a disease that changes brain chemistry. That doesn't excuse the crimes he committed, but it helps explain them, and understanding is the first step to healing. Arthur also had to face the harm he'd caused, the people he'd stolen from, the families he'd hurt, the fear he'd created. In one therapy session, they had him write letters to his victims, apologizing, taking responsibility. He cried as he wrote them. He also had to face his own family. His mother visited after 2 months. She barely recognized him. He'd gained weight, looked healthier. His eyes were clear for the first time in decades. They hugged and both cried. Arthur told her, "Mom, I think I'm going to make it this time. I really think I can do this." Margaret wanted to believe him. She'd heard promises before, but something about this time felt different. Months passed. Arthur stayed clean. He completed every requirement, attended every session, took his medication, followed the rules. For the first time in his adult life, he was living responsibly. The treatment center also provided job training. Arthur learned basic computer skills, took classes in carpentry, got his forklift certification, things that could help him get a real job when he got out. He also started mentoring newer residents at the treatment center, guys who were where he'd been months earlier, angry, resistant, hopeless. Arthur told them his story, showed them that change was possible, that if he could do it, they could too. One of the guys he mentored, a 32-year-old named Marcus, said Arthur saved his life. Marcus was ready to walk out, go back to the streets, back to drugs. Arthur talked him into staying. Told him, "Man, I'm 49, I wasted 30 years, you're 32, you got time, don't waste it like I did." Marcus stayed, got clean, found a job, still credits Arthur with turning his life around. After 1 year, Arthur completed the program. He graduated in a small ceremony. His mother was there. 2 of his 3 children came. They were cautious, still hurt from all the years of abandonment, but they came. That meant something. Judge Glazer sent a card. She wrote, "I knew that good kid was still in there. Proud of you, Arthur. Keep going." Arthur cried when he read it. He framed the card, kept it by his bed. Now he faced the real test, living in the real world, staying clean outside the structured environment of the treatment center. This is where most recovering addicts fail. The temptations, the triggers, the stress of everyday life. Hope Recovery helped him transition. They found him a job at a warehouse, entry-level, minimum wage, but it was honest work. They also set him up in a sober living house, a place where he lived with other recovering addicts. Support, accountability, drug testing, structure. Arthur worked hard at his warehouse job, showed up every day, on time, did what he was told. His supervisor noticed. After 3 months, gave him a raise. After 6 months, promoted him to team lead. Arthur also started attending NA meetings. Narcotics Anonymous, went 3 times a week, sometimes more. He got a sponsor, an older guy named Robert who'd been clean for 20 years. Robert became like a father figure, someone Arthur could call anytime. 2 a.m. struggling with cravings, call Robert. Stressed about money, call Robert. Just need to talk, call Robert. The meetings helped, hearing other people's stories, realizing he wasn't alone. That addiction affects everyone. Rich, poor, black, white, educated, uneducated. The disease doesn't discriminate. Arthur also started rebuilding relationships with his kids. Slowly, his oldest daughter, Nicole, was 28. She'd been the most hurt by his absence, the most angry, but gradually she softened. They started having coffee once a month, then twice a month. She let him meet his granddaughter, a 4-year-old he'd never seen before. Holding his granddaughter for the first time, Arthur broke down. This little girl, so innocent, so beautiful. He'd missed her birth, missed everything, because of drugs, because of crime, because of all his terrible choices. He promised himself that this little girl would know her grandfather, would have good memories of him. He wasn't going to let her down like he'd let everyone else down. 2 years after completing treatment, Arthur was still clean, still working, still going to meetings, still seeing his family regularly, still living in the sober house, though he was saving money to get his own apartment eventually. He also started speaking at schools, sharing his story with kids, showing them what happens when you make bad choices, when you start using drugs, when you think you're invincible. He'd tell them, I was just like you once, good grades, friends, future, and I threw it all away, don't be like me. The kids would ask questions. Did you ever want to quit drugs? Why didn't you? How did you afford drugs? What's prison like? Arthur answered honestly, didn't sugarcoat anything, told them the truth about addiction, about crime, about consequences. Teachers said his presentations were powerful. Kids who'd never listened to a drug prevention talk would sit quietly listening to Arthur, because he was real. He'd lived it. He wasn't some counselor reading from a pamphlet. He was someone who'd lost everything and was fighting to get it back. Judge Glazer heard about Arthur's school visits. She reached out to him. They met for coffee, first time seeing each other since that day in court almost 3 years earlier. They talked for 2 hours, reminisced about middle school, talked about life, about choices, about second chances. Judge Glazer told Arthur she was proud of him, that she knew he could do it, that the kid she remembered from Nautilus Middle School was back. Arthur thanked her, told her that moment in court changed his life, seeing someone from his past, someone who knew him before everything went wrong. It was like looking in a mirror and finally seeing clearly, seeing what he'd become, seeing what he'd lost. Judge Glazer asked Arthur if she could use his story. She was doing talks about criminal justice reform, about how prison alone doesn't work, about how treatment and support can save lives. Arthur said yes immediately. If his story can help someone, use it. They stayed in touch after that, not often but occasionally. Arthur would email her updates. Judge Glazer would send encouragement, a connection from their past that somehow led to hope for Arthur's future. 3 years clean, then 4, then 5. Each year that passed, Arthur got stronger, more confident, more stable. The cravings didn't go away completely, but they got quieter, easier to ignore. Arthur finally got his own apartment, small 1-bedroom, but it was his. He furnished it simply, put up pictures of his family, his grandkids, he had 2 now, put up his treatment center graduation certificate, put up Judge Glazer's card. His mother came over to see it. She cried. Her son, finally living right, finally making good choices, finally becoming the person she always knew he could be. She'd never given up hope even when it seemed hopeless, and now finally her prayers were answered. Arthur still works at the warehouse. He's a supervisor now, making decent money, saving up. He wants to go back to school eventually, get his GED, maybe even take some college classes. It's never too late, his sponsor Robert tells him, never too late to learn, never too late to grow. Today, Arthur Booth is 55 years old. He's been clean for 6 years, 6 years without drugs, 6 years without crime, 6 years without prison. It's the longest he's been clean since he was 14 years old. Is his story over? No, recovery is lifelong. Every day is a choice. Every day he has to wake up and choose sobriety, choose the right path, choose not to go back to who he was. But he's doing it, one day at a time, just like they teach in NA, one day at a time. And maybe, just maybe, that viral moment in Judge Glazer's courtroom really did save his life. Maybe seeing his past helped him finally see his future. A future where he's not defined by his worst moments. A future where Arthur Booth is more than just a career criminal. He's a father, a grandfather, a mentor, a survivor. And that good kid from Nautilus Middle School, he's still in there, finally coming back.